Good evening, everyone. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place and among his own kin and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Mark 6, verses 4 to 6. Why was Jesus not able to perform any mighty deed in his hometown of Nazareth? Because the people who had known him since he was a youth lacked faith in him. But why wouldn't Jesus simply perform awe-inspiring miracles with the hope of winning them over? Why not try to convince them by raising someone from the dead or by revealing his transfigured glory to his kinfolk, as he did on the Mount of Transfiguration to 3 of his disciples? The answer goes to the heart of the workings of faith in each soul. Jesus' goal in his hometown was not to convince the people that he was the Son of God, the Messiah. He could have easily convinced them of this by the most incredible of miracles and proved who he was. But doing so would have undermined the reason he came. He came to ignite authentic faith in people's hearts, not to convince them through clever reasoning or by proof of miracles. Miracles were offered to those who already had faith, so as to increase their faith and to show them mercy. But when one lacked faith, a miracle could not increase that which was absent. It might have convinced them on a rational level, or at least impressed them greatly, but that is not true faith. By analogy, say your spouse said to you, "I love you," and your response was, "Prove it." How would they do so? What could they do to prove that they truly love you? Perhaps they could show charity, kindness, compassion, and the like. These qualities certainly are manifestations of authentic love. But deep down, no one can prove they love another. Instead, love must be offered and received in a spiritual way. When that happens, each person somehow simply knows they love and are loved. This is the mystery of spiritual and authentic love. The same is true with faith. Faith can't be proved. It can't be analyzed rationally. It must be embraced and lived. If the people in Jesus' hometown were to have faith in him, this gift of faith would start within their own souls. They would look at him and listen to him. By their openness and special personal revelation from God, they would come to know and to believe who he was. Faith comes first from within, when God communicates to the heart. Reflect today upon your own level of faith in Jesus. When you look into your own soul, what do you see? Do you see a heart that knows Christ Jesus as its Lord? Have you discovered the presence of God within you, speaking to you, revealing himself to you? Or do you primarily look for external signs and proofs of God's presence and love? Look into your soul today and ponder the depth of faith that you discover there. When you discover this gift, gaze at it with love, for you are seeing God's revelation of himself to you. and God bless you.
The Gospel of today, brothers and sisters, begins with the episode with Jesus goes back to his hometown, to his native place, Nazareth, and along with the disciples. According to Mark, Jesus had been preaching and working miracles in Galilee for many months. He had spent most of the time in towns and villages around the Sea of Galilee. Before leaving Galilee, he paid a visit to his hometown, Nazareth, where he was to meet with total disappointment. He went to the synagogue on Sabbath and began to preach there. His fellow townsmen had heard about his fame, the extraordinary miracles he had worked around the other towns of Galilee, and the ways he attracted huge crowds around him wherever he went and preached. Many of those who heard him for the first time in their own synagogue were astonished at his wisdom and learning. They wondered about the source of his wisdom, for they were unaware that he had studied to be a good rabbi, and they could not understand the miraculous powers he possessed. Many who were listening to Jesus asked themselves, where does he get all this wisdom? But isn't he the son of the carpenter and Mary? That is, our neighbors, that we know him so well. Confronted with this reaction, Jesus confirms the truth that had even become a part of a popular wisdom. A prophet is not without honor except in his own country and among his own kin and in his house. In the place of Jesus, many people knew him as a son of Joseph, as a son of Mary. But nonetheless, many people did not recognize him. They could not believe the wisdom coming from the Lord. They could not believe the knowledge he has known to them, comparing from a simple and humble beginning. Thus you might know the Lord, what you might recognize His generosity, His love, His commitment to us, His forgiveness for all of us. So brothers and sisters, in this 14th Sunday, in ordinary time, the Lord is challenging us. He is challenging us to accept then the consequence of our preaching, the consequence of bringing the good news, the consequence of being a disciple and followers of the Lord. Many times and surely will not be accepted. We will not be misconstrued. We will be misconstrued. But nonetheless, we have to remember that it was Jesus Himself experienced all these inconveniences, all this non-acceptance, all these belittling attitudes from people, even those people are closest to Him, even from His native place in Nazareth. To these readings, brothers and sisters, call us to awaken our hearts so we may see the divine truth beyond the human appearance of those whom we know. It is hard to understand the irrational opposition of the people of Nazareth during the visit of Jesus to his village and of the Pharisees and scribes later. The people of Nazareth had all wonderful reports about Jesus, and a reflection would have been seen in him the true Messiah. Instead, they turned against him in bitter hatred, and they decided to put an end to his career. St. Luke tells us that they wanted to throw him down the cliff or the mountain. There was a tinge of pride and envy that made them refuse to accept him. Their hatred towards him made them close their eyes against all goodness he possessed. How about us, brothers and sisters? How is our attitude or our attitudes towards others for doing good things to other people and to all of us? Are we that envious? Do we critique immediately? Or are we allowing then the movement of the Spirit to touch our pride, to touch our ego, and in a gesture of humility to embrace all these things as being afforded by the Lord to us? That the grace of God's gifts is always appreciated in terms of recognizing, putting the Lord then in the pedestal, putting the Lord as somebody who is making the best effort for us to be saved, to be renewed, and to experience life in its fullness. A pleasant Sunday, brothers and sisters.